Hey, it's Mike G back here with Logical Raptors Fanatic, and we got a special one here today. Our kind of main series, Raptors Developing Value. And this is a next installment of kind of the same, where we look at the past, go through kind of the story and the kind of evolution of different aspects of the Raptors development machine, and kind of take a look to kind of maybe see how maybe their future might unfold based on prior processing and success of different recipes and molds and different things that I've kind of talked about in the whole series, like trades and whatnot. And I think it's really key to kind of understand some of these key points when looking at the team to kind of give a full context of like roster value and whatnot. So I think it's important that we discuss something that was said in an open gym episode, which is really interesting. We're gonna bring up our first kind of clip ever, I guess, historicalness, like I guess a trivia fact. What first clip was brought up first? You're gonna find out soon. And I think this one's going to be a little bit longer, so I wanted to cut it into two parts, even though I don't like that kind of style of content where it's kind of cut up for views. But I think lengthwise and like I've found a kind of sweet spot in between that kind of like 40 and an hour mark. And I don't want to kind of try to go too much outside of it unless everyone wants a longer like video to view. They can say so in the comments. Everyone's free to have their opinions, and I'm willing to listen to suggestions about my channel and hear things and weigh them in. I might not take every like idea, but I will try to think about it and incorporate it into the channel possibly. So every opinion matters, every voice matters. I feel that, and this is going to be an interesting one. I think it's it's going to be good, and I just want to say enjoy. All right, so I guess let's start the whole party off with the clip.
Let me walk you through your contract.
I'm upset I wasn't drafted because that's everybody's dream. But this is definitely a good situation for me, and I'm definitely happy about it. They have a way of developing these guys. They develop everybody that comes through the program, and it's a great place. I think it's like the best 2A in the league.
And lastly,
All right, so he said best 2A in the league, and I want to try to bring full context and kind of evaluate that whole part there. He said like the best place to come and develop and understand that what it took to kind of build that reputation. And obviously, if you want to look back, it's probably the best way to understand why he said that and what it means to have the best two-way contracts in the league. And I obviously I wouldn't be making this video if I didn't agree with what he said. So I think it's important to first, I guess, define what a two-way contract is. And this is right out of the CBA, so I'll just read through most of this here and kind of get everyone on the right page and understanding what a two-way contract is and what it means, right? That's important. So we'll start off. A two-way contract is the contract between a two-way player and an NBA team that pays him a two-way salary. A two-way contract is mostly defined by what it can not do and who cannot sign one, right? So those are important points right there. Like, what can the contract do and who can sign it, right? Though those are very big key points in the two-way contract and how it's used and why it was brought into the NBA for the 2017-2018 team or 2017-2018 season for every team to have an opportunity to have these guys, whether they had a G League team or not. Two ways are to have an extra spot so you can develop players and maybe like have an ability to hold certain rights and do all this kind of stuff. So we'll go into it right now. It cannot exceed 2 seasons in length. So you cannot sign a two-way that is 3 seasons in length, right? It cannot be extended or renegotiated. So you can't redo a two-way or you can't extend the two-way. You can use the rights from a two-way after converting, right? But we'll get into that probably here. So it cannot include an option or an early termination option. So he can't have a player's option after the contract. It's 2 years. That's what the contract is. Anything after that is a bit different. Early termination option is means on unspecified dates, he gets paid no matter what, right? So after opening day of the guarantee, he gets his money no matter what. You can't early terminate him and only pay him a certain amount. You have to pay him all the money, right? It cannot contain any bonuses. So there is no extra bonuses for making the playoffs or doing more games or anything like that. So it's just a standard contract, no extras like we went through in our extension series that Gary Trent has bonuses and different things on his contract. So there are no contract bonuses on two-way contracts. It cannot be signed after January 15th of any season. So that's part of it too, right? Where I said like the waiving of a two-way and all that kind of stuff goes into different things. And January 15th is a part of the early kind of deadline because then the trade deadline is in February, like a month later, right? So it's part of trying to secure the each position at a time, like making official cutoffs for certain type of contracts, similar to the MLB where they have multiple kind of like deadlines for these things. So we'll go on to the next point here. A two-way contract cannot be signed by a player that has bracket or may have during its term 4 or more years of service. For example, a player with 3 years of service cannot sign a 2-year two-way contract. So basically, what they're saying here is so a player with 3 years of service can sign a two-way contract, but not for 2 years. He can only sign for 1 year because in the duration of that contract, he would have played up to the 4-year max years of service for any two-way contract. Like this is meant specifically to bring players in and see if they can work in the NBA and have development kind of people, right? That's what this contract is. This is about developing into talent. It's a precursor, kind of like a rookie contract for whatever, undrafted guys, maybe a couple years older. There's options, right? To get these guys, but it's more for younger players, right? Because the salaries are fixed and players of more 4 years or more should already be negotiating different salary amounts and stuff. So there's a lot of things that go into that kind of as well. Like when you see a roster, they put years of experience in a box and count how many years for a reason because a lot of roster decisions are made based on years of experience and contract decisions. So it's very key stat that's not very known or looked at a lot, but it does have incredible weight when it comes to contracts, right? So, okay, let's continue here. Nor can a player sign a two-way contract that would result in the player being under a two-way contract for any point of more than 3 years with the same team. For example, a player that just completed a two-way contract cannot then sign another two-year two-way contract with that team. So basically, once you've had 2 years of two-way contract with a certain team, you cannot go back and get that two-way. You can sign a two-way with another team if those were your first 2 years or your second or third year. Then you can sign a one-year two-way if that was your second or third year in the league, or if it was your first or second, then you can sign another two-way, a 2-year two-way contract with another team. So they want the conversion. The whole point is of this two-way contract is to check out players and eventually convert them into real contract players. They don't want these old like kind of vets sitting at the end of the bench, not playing any minutes and stuff. They want to start seeing more development happen. And I think with these two-way contracts, it allows teams to preview and also shine light on certain G League talents and kind of helping each other grow, like I believe in. And it's really important factor that you have guys that are playing some NBA minutes being talked about at the NBA level, but then knowing that they're at the G League level if you want to see more, if you're intrigued by a certain player, and it's there for viewing and you can kind of see them develop. So it's trying to make a harder connection with the G League to kind of increase its money value, right? So it's about a money thing contract, but it's really good for a lot of players that are trying out for teams and stuff. Well, it depends how teams use it, and that's why kind of we're going into it today about what value from a two-way contract is. So, okay, all two-way contracts must include the standard NBA contract conversion option. This option, once exercised, must provide for salary equal to the player's applicable minimum player salary. So that's based on years in the league. Your minimum salary is based on how many years you've played in the league and how much you can make. The CBA states that you cannot give a player under a certain amount, but minimum salaries actually don't like it's weird how they work and stuff. You can only have like 6 players on minimums or non-guarantees or something like that. It gets really crazy, but ultimately, like they have no value in trades. Like it's this weird kind of dynamic, right? But it needs to be that specific conversion clause, right? A term that matches what's the remaining on the original two-way contract. Okay, so this option may only be exercised between July 1st and the team's last regular season game for each season covered by the two-way contract. So basically, it can only be converted from just before free agency till the last game of the season. So anywhere in between, you can kind of convert them from a two-way contract to a standard NBA player salary minimum. And that's how the conversion works, right? So here we go. Like a summer contract discussed below, the two-way salary in a two-way contract does not count towards a team's salary. So the team does not need to have room or salary cap extension to sign, acquire, or convert a player to a two-way contract. So this is interesting actually. So when you convert a two-way contract guy and he's still on that two-way, that salary doesn't actually come off or it doesn't go onto your like salary cap number and that luxury tax number we looked at in my extension series video. So I think that's really superly interesting how that mechanism allows for no matter what the team situation is, if that player is good enough to be an NBA player, the conversion can happen no matter what. There is nothing stopping you from converting that player. It's really good and friendly on that. So I think if we look at all these kind of points together, they're looking to kind of develop younger talent into the NBA, kind of get them ready to play NBA ball, which improves the product, but then also links NBA product to the G League product and showing that connection, how a two-way guy can eventually become a rotation guy or even a star, right? Like there's there's a way to kind of like the way people are interested in college maybe should be interested in the G League similar. There's certain players that they see at the NBA level. So it's about exposure, right? More eyes on the NBA then trickle down to the G League if those same players are being used back and forth more or less. And I think that value that the Raptors have with the connection and how close the 905 is can really expedite great development value for them as a player, right? Because if you look at the purpose of a two-way, is about stepping up. So converting that and then eventually signing another contract after the conversion. So we have to understand the objectives of a two-way contract, right? And that's how we can maybe determine whether the Raptors have the best two-way contracts in the league. So I think we'll go into it year by year now, where we kind of discuss each year and the two-way contracts we sign for each year and discuss the guy and go through their future and kind of their past and kind of how the two-way contract, whether it stepped their game up, like I said, so converted, then signed another contract, right? That's what it's about. So that's where we're going to look to see if we can see whether from the player's eyes, right? This is from a player's eyes, that Toronto has the best two-way contract based on development and conversion, which is the principles marked in the CBA guidelines for the contract. It shows in numerous ways of what it's trying to what its aim is in order to get certain talent into the door, right? And I think that's really important because either that or they go to Europe, right? So you're enhancing the game, the NBA game a little bit more by having an interesting contract and saving those slots for these guys, right? So okay, we're gonna go on to the starting the timeline. Obviously, starting in 2017, 2018 season because that was the first year that the two-way contract was brought. I think the G League was more established, and I think they've seen certain results of a lot of players playing in the G League and then becoming really good later on. I think the Raptors have been using the 905 since its inception. Pascal and Van Vliet won the G League championship in its second year, right? So we've been using it the whole time. Powell was our first kind of higher pick that went into the G League for that first initial rookie season, and we've kind of done that as well. But I think it's important to maybe focus on the two-way contracts this time around. And I want to kind of narrow in the information because this one's gonna obviously going through each year, kind of talking about different players and stuff. It's gonna take a while, so I just want to say I'm glad everyone's here and enjoy. All right, so we got our first two ways, or the Raptors' first ever two ways, and it's really interesting what happened with these two guys. It's our like first time at bat with the two ways and trying to kind of figure out what's the best method to use them and how maybe like to utilize them in creating value for the bigger club, right? That's the important aspect. I think a lot of teams fail to make that connection from G League player to like real NBA player. And I think that that leap is kind of hard to make in development. So I think it's important maybe to kind of show the precursors and triggers and signals and indicators of their time on that contract and then go through the history afterwards, right? So we start right here with our guy, Malcolm Miller, obviously part of the championship team, but we'll go into that age 24, his first season. So the first year of the two-way, like we talked about, the two-way can be either 1 year or 2 years in length. But I think you're going to see a trend where we usually only have the same guy on a two-way 1 year and kind of convert him into a deep bench position and kind of utilize that more to fill out the roster with injuries and different things. So I think that's part of the value as well. So like it's really we'll go through the different scenarios after that first year of the two-way because most players only played 1 year under the two-way. So okay, we'll continue now. All right, so age 24, yeah, we talked about that. Okay, so Malcolm pre-Raps. So he was playing in the G League under the main Red Claws or Claw, sorry, and he played 47 games, averaged 31.8 minutes. And I kind of, there's a lot of stats, obviously, but I think I marked the key ones that we're looking at in development kind of aspects. So field goal attempts, 8.5, and 3-point attempts, 4.3. Those amounts matter, I think, when you're looking at field goal percentage and what kind of player that 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 player showed to be. And I think it's really important. A bunch of these stats here, but I think it gives you a glimpse of what the player kind of is or was. So let's go through it a bit more. So we have 4.96 attached to that total field goal attempts, right? And then we have a 3.94, which is actually really good on 4.5 threes a game. So it shows that, like, even at 24, so he's an older prospect, he has a more developed three ball. So he deserves kind of a spot. I guess we're looking at him maybe as a three guy, you know what I mean? 3 and D player. Well, we'll look at his other stats here. So rebounds, 4.2, not bad. Assists, 1.2. He's not really a playmaker. It looks like he's more of a shooter than anything, right? Steals 0.7. So that's probably appropriate. And blocks, he actually has a number of blocks at 1.3 per game, right? So you can see the kind of like that 3 and D kind of mold that they were looking at. They knew that 3 and D players in this year, this was actually the year that they drafted OG. So they picked up another 3 and D guy and points 12.4. So on 8 attempts per game, spacing with three, you can see kind of why the Raptors want to kind of at least give him a try and see maybe we can refine some of his other skills. Give him more of an opportunity, right? This is what it's about. Stepping up the skills that kind of anchor him in the NBA and then developing out those other skills, right? So let's look at what he did in the Raptors year. So obviously, we're going to go over the main body of stats for each guy. And I think the G League stats matter more because we're talking about development pieces in these two-way contracts. It's their first couple years in the league, and that those are the years that players start to adjust and really either gain steam or don't really do anything. And we're going to talk about that in a second, but we'll go through the rest of Malcolm Miller here first. So he played for the Raptors 905. Okay. So games played 34. So less. Okay. But minutes 27.9. Okay. Less, but more field goal attempts. Okay. And more three-point attempts. Okay. So we're going to look. So obviously, shooting more threes, his field goal percent went down, but he is shooting more. So that's understood, I think. And then obviously, his three-point percent looks stabilized, even though he's shooting more threes, right? So, like, it's showing like he's shown what they're looking for with increasing role. They want to see that certain numbers stabilize and you're able to continue kind of being the player you are in different scenarios. They're going to challenge you, they're going to experiment, they're going to chemistry up the mixture a bit. Like Nick Nurse said in one of his preseason conference like videos, right? Where he basically like told everyone that we use the 905 as a experimental ground where we kind of test different things, and then we might test things at the big club and stuff, and players are open to that. They understand why we're doing it, and it's all in mind for championship basketball. We're always trying new different things. We're always trying to be first on things, and that takes actual hard work and development and trying things and actually understanding the results of when to back off and when to go full steam with something. So I think it's really key to kind of see maybe certain trends in the two ways, because it's kind of really interesting how there's two each season and they're kind of like in the same position. So it's kind of like easy to kind of rank them through the years and see which ones were better and which ones weren't. So hence is my thumbnail where you can see Chris Boucher's right up there, and we'll go through it obviously. But I want to tie back maybe to the thumbnail a little bit, but we'll continue here. So his rebounds went up, his assists went up, his steals went up a point, but his blocks went down. So I think we kind of saw him maybe as more of like a small forward shooting guard. We were looking at him in that position. And I think at that time we were not wanting, we were trying to push for what role he was actually going to have with us with the big club, and think focusing on that more. And you can see that trend. Hold on in a second, but he did have a little uptick in points, so not bad. So I think it was, as you can see, the trends. He improved in certain areas, and his three ball was stable, and what they wanted him for kind of worked with the big club at the time, right? Because I think understanding fit with the big club is really important. A guy can smash apart the G League, but if he doesn't fit with the big club, he's not going to get minutes. He's not going to really grow anymore without any time fitting in with some of our main players. So if their skills are redundant, they're not going to see a lot of time. And we'll go through in our next example, but let's let's finish out his history here. So two more seasons with the Raptors 905 and deep bench Raptors role. So I think they converted him at some point, or ended the two-way and kind of gave him a similar contract to what Champagny has, where they signed him up for 2 years more with a team option on the second year, and then played him in the similar two-way contract role, but had the salary to kind of have him on a real contract in a sense and use this two-way slot for someone else in the next year. So he had a deep bench role, didn't really see a lot of minutes, so I don't think it's important to really go into that. He was part of the 2019 championships, right? Champion Raptors. He was there. We marked it. We got one up on the board for our man Malcolm Miller. All right, let's move on to Lorenzo Brown, which I think is a more interesting case and kind of somewhat of a different kind of what we did with him, right? This is a completely different scenario. Obviously, Malcolm Miller is a young 24-year-old, like we talked about in our trade tree video, where we looked at Patrick McCaw kind of, or sorry, Patrick Patterson in the same way when we traded for him. He was like age 24, had some 3 and D skill, and we've been looking for the same kind of type of guys forever. I'm telling you, it's gonna be evident in some of the trends, but we'll continue here, right? So Lorenzo Brown, salute my man won the Eurobasket with our man Bo Cruz, aka Juancho Hernan Gomez. I don't know how that became his like main name, but okay, we'll roll with it. And our man Sergio Scoriola, yeah, yeah, our man, our championship coach. He's a great coach. Won gold with Marcus Gasol. I love that Spanish connection. I'm actually my my mom's side of my family is from Spain, so I really love that really solid culture and really great connection of Spanish talent and pipeline. And I'm sure Lorenzo Brown was talking to Bo Cruz about what it's like, even early days wise with the Raptors, right? So okay, let's go through it. Age 27 though. See, I think that's where you have to look at the difference in the grading scale and what kind of happened. So, okay, Lorenzo pre-Raps actually has a long history in the NBA. So he played 3 seasons with Philly, Minnesota, and Phoenix. And I think he played most of his games for Minnesota and Philly. They're the tanking Philly in 13, 14. And then he went to Minnesota where they played him a lot and they're like a tanker. And then 15, 16, he went to Phoenix, which is like a tanker, but he didn't really play any minutes there. So, eh, I don't know. So I think we'll focus more on his G League averages. He actually spent 6 seasons in the G League before us with Delaware. Um, I think that's the Spurs one, and then Grand Rapids. And so G League averages points 18.5, games played 70.4 total. So this is his averages. So these are different averages than these ones. So this is his like career average for those 6 seasons, right? Before us. So he played 74 games total in the G League before he came to us, an average of 32.8 minutes, an average of 14 field goal attempts per game, an average of 3.4, oh, sorry, 3 point attempts at 3.3 attempts. And his field goal percentage was 480, and his 3 point percentage was like average at 3.53 here. Rebounds 5.3, assists pretty high. So you could tell he's like kind of a guard, like a taller, bigger kind of style. A little bit like a tweener between guard and small forward. And I think we were trying to build up our versatility at that time because Masai started to understand the concept of versatility in the lineup and understanding what really how it can really change how your playoff look like. And obviously the next year our championship team kind of had that versatility feel with a lot of the roles and different guys being able to play different positions and different roles on the team really well. So, all right, so we'll go into his season with us, which is actually a big season, our first, maybe not our first, but he was the 2017-18 G League MVP. So these are the MVP stats for that year. G League, Raptors 905. Played a couple like big club games, but I think I want to focus again back with the main stats of how we evaluate our two ways. So I think 32 games played in that season, 33.3 minutes played. He got 15.6 field goal attempts, so higher than his average, right? And then 3-point attempts, so hit his about his average, right? Shot less on his total field goals and shot less on his 3 points. So okay, so you can understand he wasn't what was kind of fitting in with the team. We'll look at the other stats though too. He won MVP, so there's got to be a reason right here. Okay, so fifth rebounds 5.2 and assists. Wow, 8.8. So obviously this guy is like kind of like a playmaker, a point guard kind of type of guy. Not a great shooter, but can play defense because his steals at 1.8 and blocks at 0.2. So that shows that he was probably more in guard position, but has a bit of length and size to still be able to block certain guards and stuff. And he shows that he had experience, and this is probably more of a ceiling. I think a guy that is 27 years old should be like blowing up the G League like this, and I think it's only respectable in that kind of fashion, I think. And now let's discuss the dilemma here. Post Raptors two-way first year, one more season with the Raptors, deep bench from 2017 to 2019. So basically, after this year, we either converted him or signed him up for something else. And basically, I think just he was so deep in we were so guard heavy at that time, right? The 17-18 season was the last season with DeMar, right? So we had DeMar, Lowry, we had Fred Van Vliet, and we had DeLon Wright. So he would have been like way down the list, right? On this team. But then we traded DeMar and we got back another guard, so that kind of left him in the same position. And even later on, when we traded away DeLon Wright, I think we were very comfortable with Danny Green, Lowry, and Fred Van Vliet and Norman Powell being our four-man guard rotation. And then having, I think they actually waived him before the playoffs to pick up the infamous Jeremy Lin Sanity. Still hate that he hit us with that buzzer beater, but I think he had more big league experience than this guy, right? He played more seasons, has more of starter caliber experience. I think that's important when you're looking at certain players. It's not always about what position they're in currently. It's the position you want to put them in, right? So Sergio Scariola was a head coach, and that matters. So bringing him in as an assistant strengthens your head coach. Bringing in other head coaches, guys that have had numerous years as a head coach in different circumstances, really enhances your coaching staff. Having three head coaches is better than one, right? Think about it. It's very clear and obvious, but unfortunately, Lorenzo Brown got cut before we won the championship. Around the same time, we dumped kind of DeLon Wright which I'll go into probably another video where another kind of similar Raptors developing value and talk about some of the mistakes. I still want to get into a lot of that stuff. We have a whole season. I don't think the roster will change too much during the season, so I think I can focus more on some of these other interesting history linkage pieces. And last thought about Lorenzo. He had 3 seasons in the NBA, so he could have only signed a 1-year two-way, so they didn't convert him, they signed him to a new two-way. Sorry, quick edit. But we'll continue on here with our man, Jordan Lloyd. Guy in the suit, the shot, yeah. That's a boss title, not gonna lie, for the year he spent with us. So we're looking at the championship year, the 2018, 2019 Raptors two ways, and we had Jordan Lloyd signed up. So we had Malcolm Miller this year as well. So Malcolm Miller was on a different contract, right? So we used our two-way slots to get Jordan Lloyd and Chris Boucher. Obviously, we'll start with Jordan Lloyd because it's I think Boucher kind of marks a landmark in how we operate with our two ways. And I think it's like almost like pre-Boucher and then post-Boucher. So we'll go into Lloyd first, right? So obviously the guy in the suit in the shot had to be on the team. So he's got a chip, age 25, so around like the age of kind of guys that have finished their rookie deal. So let's look here. Jordan pre-Raps, G League. He played for the Fort Wayne Mad Ants, which is the affiliate for I think OKC. The the games played 49, minutes played 28.4, field goal attempts 11.8, 3-point attempts at 3.9. So he had field goal percent. And I think they were looking at him as guard, small forward. So 4.36 is probably more appropriate for guards. But he looked to have an okay three ball. We could try to develop it more, maybe fix his shot. Maybe they saw something in his shot where he can get that number up, right? So I think obviously the mold, they're looking for a 3 and D kind of shooting guard, small forward again. Rebounds, 4.2. So that's kind of like the small forward side. Jordan Lloyd had a bit more playmaking, like so assists with 4, right? Decent, okay steals at 0.9 and okay blocks at 0.3, 15.1 points. So it shows he can be like a fitting piece. That's what we're looking for. Guys that can fit with our main guys, right? We're not looking for main role guys with our two ways. We're looking for guys that can fit with our team, right? So let's go on and look for improvements in the season that he played with us, right? So in the 2018-19 G League season, where he was 25 years old, he played for the Raptors 905, played 41 games, so less games, more minutes though, so 35.5 minutes, less field goal attempts, but more threes. So I think it shows they were trying to go for a 3 and D kind of guy. So he actually shot better somehow on less twos and more threes, but obviously they fixed something in his shot, right? So his 3-point percentage went up with more attempts, which is usually the reverse of how this goes. So I think it was really interesting that he showed this, but 3.67, obviously way better above league average, where he was below league average before. More rebounds, more assists, more steals, about the same number of blocks, for more points. So I think it's a really interesting kind of guy that they were looking at. But I think he showed the improvements and stuff, but I think the way that we chose to fill out our roster the next year became completely different based on Boucher and what he did in his two-way contract season. It's gonna become very clear in a second, but he was he did show improvements, and that's what they're looking for. He did hit certain values and stuff, but I think they would have wanted more to see his total attempts more up at the 2 point, so maybe he wasn't getting to the rim as much and stuff. Who knows? We're obviously like looking way back, but he didn't really become a great player or anything. Shout out, he had a great podcast interview where he was talking about how he had to like pay his Raptors salary to some European team because he signed a contract and they wouldn't let him out of it. So they had to he had to like pay them and stuff. So it was craziness. But okay, so his post slash 1 year with the Raptors, they converted him at the end of the year to come onto the championship team. He kind of got hurt, so it wasn't really anything, but that's why he was in a suit in the shot. And he does still get etched in memory, so at least the year he paid for was a good year and worth it, right? Like he said. So cheers to Jordan Lloyd. I hope he can still build out a career for himself anywhere. Hopefully, you know what I mean. I don't want to see him out of the league or anything, but obviously this is a business. It's results based. Uh, Maybe he didn't have a mindset or something or the other that we didn't see because statistically he did hit certain markers that I would say indicate that he deserved another year at least to see what he could do with us. So let's go on to the man, the myth, the legend, Trey Boucher, Chris Boucher, the man. Obviously, we went deep into his basketball history and our other developing value video with him specifically. And we talked about kind of the road after this. So we'll go into it. Hold on. So Chris Boucher, we got him at age 26. He won the championship with us. He's the first Canadian to win an NBA championship, or first Canadian yet to win an NBA championship on a Canadian team in the NBA, which is probably a trivia fact. Hopefully, we're going to get more, like I said in my Carter Effect, Raptors Effect video. So Chris pre-wraps, we talked about his time with the Golden State Warriors, big and small clubs. So we kind of showed kind of how it didn't really matter what he did at the big club level, and we're trying to focus on his G League stats because I think this is the mold, what they're looking for in every G League player and two-way going forward. This is the revelation that Brian Windhorst was talking about with the two-way contracts and understanding contract value, and I think understanding why Toronto is said to have the best two-way contracts in the league. No one has reached heights similar to Chris Boucher, and being such a late age talent, doing it against all odds and completely, I think, revolutionizing the aspect of what a two-way is and what can be done with a two-way. I think that's the revolutionary part. And I think we're looking through kind of comparing him to his peers now almost in that kind of marker set season, what he did. So let's continue forward. He played 20 games, 22.2 minutes played. He got 9.7 field goal attempts per game, and he got 2.5 3-point attempts per game. which he shot 4.69 on field goal attempts, and that was meh, I guess, for him. Like he's more of a rim runner, and then I think the threes really bombed his kind of percentage a bit, with being almost a quarter of his shots being at this such a low percentage, right? 3-point percentage at 220. So I think he was just trying out and testing that three game. He's told he needed to work on it early, probably by someone. So he started to really put in that solid work and really started to work on the three ball where it is now. But we can see obviously in this year, the 2017-18 year, he signed the first ever, I guess, Warriors G League contract, right? Or sorry, Warriors two-way contract. So, and then they cut him, right? So, or waived him, whatever, you know what I mean? So, rebounds 7.5, nice and high. Assists, he's more of a finisher, rim runner, shooter kind of guy. Steals 0.5, and then nice solid blocks, so 2.2. So, you could see kind of the makings of what he had. His main attribute, obviously, speed and height, so blocking and rebounding. And I think he had an interesting offensive bag where they could work on it. And they've been scouting, obviously, Canadian talent for so long. It's so easy to scout them. It's a crime not to actually go out there and kind of know everything about each Canadian player, and kind of understood that this 11.8 points and these low attempts and these minutes per game weren't telling of what he could do as a player, right? And it clearly shows in the next season here, right? 2018-19 G League MVP and Defensive Player of the Year at age 26. This is a fantastic set of numbers. He obviously showed improvement. 8 games more played, about 12 more minutes at 34.2, and he got 10 more almost shots per game. So a bigger role, bigger chance. They believed in him, right? This is where I think they start to see the mold of where they start giving more attempts, more minutes, and they start to truly change how they look at what they can do with the position. Like we're going to look at these underutilized talent guys that have a great skill, and we're going to look to define them more over time and see if they can come into the big club and be a rotation piece, right? So I think if we go back here, field goal average 509. So you can see his three ball went up. So obviously his total field goal percentage went up, but he had more attempts. So that's ridiculously great regarding growth, right? You can see how he completely smashed what he was doing the year previous with the 3 point. It's still a bit low, but he came up 100 points in a season, and he shot way many more threes, right? So it shows that he's been really putting in the work, and this is where it needs to show. This is where the hard work needs to show. I don't need to see you doing crap in practice. I need to see it being used in game, under game speed, under game pressure. We need to see how you actually perform, right? In the moment, right? Rebounds higher, got more minutes, so you can expect certain stats to have a a similar increase. So he has a third more time. So you could see he has about another third blocks, right? Because 8 would be that, and then 12 would be a new third, right? So we can round down or up or whatever you want, but it's basically like a third more block a rebound. So that's what they want to see when they scale up minutes. They scale up attempts. They want to see improvements, right? So, okay, assists 1.1, right? So a little bit more than he had there, about a third, right? Again. So steals, that increased more than a third, right? And wow, like, you know what I mean? 3D and scoring and doing all this stuff. Obviously, he won MVP and Defensive Player of the Year based on these defensive stats right here, just even that. But more the advanced stats, I think those um, awards are determined by a lot of advanced stats, hence Jokic and different players of winning it, like Rudy Gobert winning it a bunch of times, were based on center advanced statistics and stuff. So 4.1 monster blocks. Obviously, went through it in my developing Raptors developing value video with him, and 27.2 points. Like, if they could scale exactly what he did in this season to the bigger club, that's what they were looking for. That's what they wanted ultimately with him. And I think once he hit this season, they converted him and he never looked back. He never looked back at the G League, never needed to go back there. I think they they saw a deficiency, a major deficiency. Chris started playing basketball late, and his basketball IQ wasn't as developed as other players his age. His body wasn't as worn as players his age. So there was a lifetime of results based on the value. So that has to matter too. So they have to be young enough where the results last for a while, and health of body and all these kind of different factors come into play, right? And I think Chris Boucher kind of hit the highest, like the longest chances, but hit the highest degree, which is ridiculous if you look at trends and how different things work, right? So that season, obviously, we want to bring him up and start having him sponge knowledge off a great center in Gasol and a great power forward in Ibaka, and start to learn that NBA role and that speed and get him up there. So let's talk about his post history. Obviously, if you want the full breakdown in his history, I went through it in the video I keep plugging of the Chris Boucher developing value. I can't say enough about that video. He is such a special person on and off the court. I think it was just such an honor and pleasure, and really, really grateful that he signed that contract and is with us for this ride, because I think he can really have a great positive effect for our team. And he doesn't fake the funk, like announcing his Slim Ducks Foundation, which is a great play on words. I love that kind of stuff. Hence, Logical Raptors fanatics, like Slim Chance, younger people, like he was. His story, the whole video was like kind of about what he did, like his slim chances. And Slim Ducks is such a great, like, wow. It encompasses him as a person beyond the catchy nickname Slim Chance Ducks, right? That's kind of what he's saying with that. And he did say that when he signed his contract. I'm looking at the platform that I'm offered here in Toronto and looking to help and provide with that this season with a different contract. We'll go through it here. So currently, the year 2020. So I want, yeah, most of my videos to be viewable back in maybe, let's say, 5 years' time. I don't know if that sounds crazy, but you can look back at most of my videos, and in time, they'll still kind of have a great, true knowledge base and have that valid info and kind of really be centered around futuristic ideas by looking at the past and more cemented facts than kind of speculating on other things and stuff. I do those videos too, but I think I have those not in playlists that say like timeless valid. So I'm very careful. I'm not trying to clickbait anyone here. I'm trying to kind of have it organized and resourced up to be here if anyone wants to kind of check back on different subjects I've talked about. A lot of the time, my views don't change that quickly over time, and I think I still believe Chris Boucher doesn't fake the funk, and when he says something, he means it. He doesn't have that time to fluff anything like that. So I think when he said what he said when he signed his contract really meant something, and I saw that as a signal, right? People that choose their words carefully and do what they say, you have to really dive deeper into the context of the words they use because they're very chosen at like they're very thought over and chosen and they're such like eye-opening comments a lot of the time that a lot of people glance over certain things that are said, but I see certain things in the context of what he said there, and I kind of had a feeling that he was going to start to expand out his brand with maybe a foundation. Not, I didn't know like foundation, but I thought maybe more podcasting, more commercials, like use his platform to kind of maybe help the Montreal community, like have more camps and different things that other players are obviously doing off the court, which is great. And that's part of the Raptors way. And I think he embodies a lot of the things that we want our team to be about, right? A guy that has taken so many hits in his career and just keeps coming forward stronger, better, more developed, and more refined, right? So in 2020, he signed the 2-year, 13.5. People thought he was overpaid, did well those seasons, right? Killed the Tampa season, and then killed his return season was kind of uh the tale of two seasons in its own, but I think he found his way at the end and has really shown exactly what he means when he kind of understood his role change and has kind of really shown such great effectiveness in the bottom line stats like plus minus and kind of creating a positive winning impact. Him and Precious, obviously great combination. I just love that we didn't look at that one season statistics and gave him the respect he deserved as a guy that has really gone to bat for us and really helped us refine this two-way mold. You have to pay respects to certain guys like trailblazers. We're going to have to pay respects to Fred Van Vliet if we want those next undrafted guys to see, okay, if you hit everything that's demanded and asked of you by the front office, we will pay you appropriately when business, NBA business dictates so, right? And I think we have to tie back to the original comment, I guess, of what Ron Harper Jr. said. The Raptors have the best two-way contracts in the league. And I think this was a massive signal based on that factor. Like, beyond belief how well he's done from coming from a two-way contract to making this much money and being hooked up on a great winning team. Like he's not on some bottom trash team where he's making a giant money to lose. He's getting paid this money to win by winners that don't usually shell out money to people, right? So obviously part of the 2019 championship. And I think right here we're gonna probably end it off and do some housekeeping. All right, so yeah, I'm sorry, I'm gonna make this short. Like, the video got longer than I hoped to get it, but obviously it needed another part too. There's a lot of information in what I was saying and stuff, and obviously check out the Chris Boucher video. I'm gonna go over the picks quick. Uh, his first two-way with the Warriors, and then obviously him with the strap in the Raptors gym. Almost like you could have had him Warriors, and you look like you need him now, but we have him and we developed him properly and showed you how to get it done. And that's why you took JAMA. But either way, I hope everyone enjoyed it. Keep an eye out for part two next weekend. I just want to say that all the support, the likes, comments, everything has been great. I'm always kind of hanging out in Raptor Freak Lex's 9:30 a.m. Eastern kind of Raptors chat with all the fans and kind of like the diehard kind of Raptors daily talking about things in the morning and stuff. It's a really good time. So, all right, Logical Raptors Fanatic out. Mic, mic drop.